In his third encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, meaning brothers all, the Pope compiles and categorizes the main proposals of the social discourses of his pontificate, in Rome and during his trips. He summarizes them in an encyclical to propose them as a solemn magisterium addressed to all Catholics. In front of global indifference and the temptation to detach ourselves from others, the Pope asks to remember that we are all in the same boat. He says the only option in front of the world's suffering and people's wounds is to follow the example of the Good Samaritan, who helps an injured man without worrying about who he is, what he believes, nor where he's from.
Essere capaci di avere compassione, questa è la chiave, questa è la nostra chiave. Se tu davanti a una persona bisognosa non senti compassione, se il tuo cuore non si commuove, vuol dire che qualcosa che non va. Stai attento, stiamo attenti. Non ci lasciamo trascinare dalla insensibilità egoistica.
The Pope asks to recognize the intrinsic dignity of every human being, who always deserves to be acknowledged, valued, and loved, regardless of individual ideas, feelings, practices, and sins. In Fratelli Tutti, the Pope warns against reductive anthropological visions and against a profit-based economic model that does not hesitate to exploit, discard, and even kill human beings.
La ambición desenfrenada de dinero que gobierna. Ese es el estiércol del diablo. El servicio para el bien común queda relegado.
The idea is that businessmen strive to create jobs for people, not for speculation. The Pope recalls the drama of migration. He is concerned about outbreaks of xenophobia and racism. He advocates for helping people in their native countries so that they aren't forced to leave. He also asks that society, including Christians, recognize that it is treating migrants as if they were less human.
Il Signore ci chiederà conto di tutti i migranti caduti nei viaggi della speranza. Sono state vittime della cultura dello scarto.
The Pope reiterates that war always leaves the world worse off than it was. He proposes looking at the effects war has on victims to really understand its gravity. He calls for stopping the proliferation of nuclear weapons and instead putting that money toward a global fund against hunger.
En el mundo de hoy, en el que millones de niños y familias viven en condiciones infrahumanas, el dinero que se gasta y las fortunas que se ganan en la fabricación, modernización, mantenimiento y venta de armas, cada vez más destructivas, son un atentado continuo que clama al cielo.
He also notes the change previously made to the Catechism of the Church, making the death penalty inadmissible in all cases. He says dialogue isn't merely about listening to the other's perspective, but about being able to admit that it may include legitimate convictions and concerns. It's an attitude, he says, people of all religions must adopt.
Sono chiamati figli di Dio coloro che hanno appreso l'arte della pace e la esercitano. Sanno che non c'è riconciliazione senza dono della propria vita e che la pace va cercata sempre e comunque.
That's why he says acting alone is not enough. Rather, he says it is essential to find ways to collaborate with others. Fratelli Tutti covers many other issues. The Pope asks that the religious perspective also be taken into account, as it is wrong when the only voices to be heard in public debate are those of the powerful and experts. He rehashes the value of kindness, and he warns against those who spread division, hatred, and distrust on the internet. He asks to recognize the goodness and beauty that God has sown in each of us. Inspiration for the encyclical came from Christian figures like St. Francis and Charles de Foucault, as well as non-Catholics like Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu, Mahatma Gandhi, and Ahmad al-Tayeb, the Sunni Muslim leader.